And by the way, what he's not doing over the holidays is raising money. We could talk about that another time as to, there's a bunch of different job descriptions to be the speaker. And one of them is to be the leading fundraiser for your party. And Mike, who seems, he's very deep in the policy, this laddered CR is very creative. I get all of that. But is he out there raising, the millions of dollars the party needs over the holidays to help keep the majority? That would remain to be seen. So no, it looks like he's on the phone, or I expect him to be on the phone talking about different possibilities with different sort of the five families within the Republicans. If he's not doing his job.
Well, okay, so if he's doing his job or not in the interim, Mick, it still is a question of how long he gets to keep the job, right? We had a whole conversation when the continuing resolution was getting off the ground that, oh, wow, he gets to pass a clean CR with Democratic support when Kevin McCarthy did not. I just wonder how far that grace realistically is going to extend, Mick.
I can't imagine very much further. I thought it would be better than this, Kaylee. I really did, because I talked to folks on the Hill and they're like, yeah, there'll be a honeymoon period. We're going to give them a while. And I was surprised at how short that went, at least for some folks. I still think the appetite for another speaker battle is very, very low right now. But I also know this, which is that the tensions are extraordinarily high. I've been in Washington a little bit recently. You go over to the Capitol Hill Club, the Republican Club, and the tension is palpable in the building. This is usually a place that folks would go to sort of unwind, and you might fight during the day, but you go and have dinner together at the end of the night, and that's just not happening. So the fractures within the Republican Party right now in the House are absolutely real. And my guess is for Mike Johnson, that speaks to a much shorter honeymoon period, because you're exactly right. I mean, somebody has to ask the question, how would it have been different if Kevin McCarthy was still in charge? And right now the answer is not very.
Wow. I can only imagine the stuff you hear at the Capitol Hill Club. What are the factions at this point? Mick, we like to talk about the fact that you're co-founder of the Freedom Caucus and that you have a sense of, I guess, the pulse in that group, but that's not even a single group anymore. Has this come down to individual lawmakers in their positions against the speaker?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And that, by the way, both parties struggle with that. There's a longer discussion to be had about misaligned incentives and what sort of people run for office now. And do people actually go to Washington to be lawmakers and legislators, or do they go to Washington to become famous in social media sort of, fantastics? There's a lot of individuality out there right now. You got a lot of individuals playing what is traditionally a team sport, especially in the House. And it is having a negative effect. I count at least four groups. You've got the Freedom Caucus folks. Then you've got the folks who are further out on the right in the Freedom Caucus, or the anarchist wing. That's the Matt Gaetz wing of the party. You've got the more traditional conservatives in the Republican Study Committee. You've got this Main Street folks who are sort of the centrist. And then you've got the appropriators, which is an entirely different group. So Mike Johnson's got a lot of different interests to balance. And he doesn't have a lot of experience with that, and he doesn't have a lot of goodwill built up. Now, that being said, he doesn't have a lot of negative will either. There's folks who say that Kevin lied to them, and they're not saying that about Mike. But Kevin also had 2 decades worth of goodwill built up that Mike's not had a chance to do yet.
Well, that was the whole conversation around how he got the gavel in the first place. Maybe it was less about how many friends he had, but how few enemies, Mick. As we talk about the challenges that Johnson is facing in keeping his conference together, it's not just a spending fight he has to navigate or questions around funding for Israel and Ukraine. He is going to, in very short order, when they return from the holiday, have to deal with an expulsion resolution for Congressman George Santos, the Republican from New York. Of course, there was that scathing ethics committee report released last week, resulted in the chair of the ethics committee putting forward this expulsion resolution. Do you think Santos is done, Mick?
I do. Actually, I think that's probably the easiest thing for him to deal with. That sort of puts the rest of it in perspective. An expulsion of one of your own members at a time when you have an extraordinarily narrow margin. But my guess is that George is probably gone. There's especially now in light of the ethics committee findings and so forth, he'll be gone, and that may, at least for a short period of time, takes the margin down by another seat. No, I thought you were going to go, Kaylee, to the impeachment issues and the other investigations and so forth as to whether or not that's not a spending issue. It's not a government shutdown issue, but it's something they're going to have to deal with, because there are going to be swing members, centrist members of Mike Johnson's party who don't want to deal with that, because I think it's a negative in their races. So that's going to be another battle he's got to face beyond just spending. But I think Santos is the low-hanging fruit. By the way, I think it speaks volumes to either party when they are willing to hold their own accountable. I have a great deal of respect for some of the Democrats in the Senate, what they've said about Bob Menendez. And I have a great deal of respect for a lot of the Republicans who have come out against George Santos in light now of this ethics finding. So my guess is, in a strange, bizarre kind of way, that's going to be the easiest thing that Mike Johnson has to deal with over Christmas and Thanksgiving.